On the path that American children travel to adulthood, two pathways oversee the journey. The first pathway is one that the public hears about while society promotes its beneficial effects: college. Some may remember feeling skittish or extroverted once they first set out for this new journey. Yet, this pathway has some shortcomings. It is expensive, and the intended funding for education is shifted to other societal sectors, creating less movement for students to go to college. On the other hand, prison is the second overseeing journey in which some children will encounter in their adult life. In this facility, the attention that inmates receive comes directly from their authority. Probation officers are their teachers, and lectures are taught through hardship. While the government prioritizes individuals to attend court dates, this overlooks the importance of societal growth by allocating greater quantity of funds towards the incarcerated from the education budget instead of their students. This inequality is promoting less positive outcomes for the inmates and for students alongside.
Today, we in this country have more people in jail than any other country on earth, including China, a communist authoritarian country with a population 4 times our size. We have more people in jail than China does.
The Senator of Vermont, Bernie Sanders, has indicated that the United States of America has the highest incarceration rate among any other nation in the world. And the state of California has the nation's largest state prison system. Prisons, known as total institutions, facilitate essential necessities to inmates for them to live. With nearly 170,000 men and women behind bars, the state spends a range of $47,000 to $60,000 per inmate and approximately $9,000 per student starting from K to 12th grade. The cost for an inmate includes infrastructure maintenance, housing, health insurance, security staff, food, human development programs, and other elements. These patterns are demonstrating that the state of California is spending more towards jails rather than schools. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger noted in his 2010 State of Address that the Los Angeles Unified School District was projecting a deficit of $640 million in the 2010 to 2011 academic year, which resulted in laying off thousands of teachers and other staff members, leading to an increased number of unemployment rate within the school faculty and staff. The problem surges due to a grasp of too many individuals being arrested from African American and Latino communities, and prison now stands firmly between the young people working hard to reach and feel the fulfillment of the American dream. They are seen as targets due to how they behave in the open of society and are seen as suspicious based on how they are physically profiled. Those who execute the authoritative power believe that obliging these individuals to go to court, imposing probation and parole restrictions, or staying in a correctional facility will shape their behavior, as well as easing the disruptions of peace among them and the communities. The objective behind this process is to make arrest counts instead of promoting public safety. President Obama's budget request for fiscal year 2017 includes $69 billion in discretionary funding, a $1 billion increase than the 2016 appropriation. Yet, the Department of Education research finds that more than 40% of low-income schools are not obtaining a fair share of the state and local budget funds. Because public K-12 schools are funded from local communities and property taxes, this is a problem that occurs around local control that promotes the cycles of inequality because there exists an economic segregation between neighborhoods. When the rich got richer, they evidently moved to affluent suburbs where other rich people were also moving.
So most prisons and jails are about 30 years old in California. The state prisons tend to be 50 years old or older. There have been some newer ones that have been constructed. The problem is that most of them are beyond capacity. For example, if it's been built for 5,000 people, it's not unusual to have 12 to 15,000 people. The other problem is the lack of tax money to repair and maintain the prisons. These buildings have a much higher rate of deterioration and wear and tear, so it takes a much higher amount of money than the typical government building. In addition, most politicians make the laws more and more rigid, and at the same time, that increases the incarceration rate, but it does not increase the funding to build new prisons. So they need to build new generations of prisons and reduce the overall inmate population.
Why are we not promoting support to young children facing these challenges? Can we imagine a criminal justice system that prioritizes recovery, prevention, civic inclusion rather than punishment? A criminal justice system that acknowledges the legacy of exclusion that minorities such as African Americans and Latinos in the United States have faced, and that does not promote or perpetuate these exclusions. And finally, a criminal justice system that believes in these citizens rather than treating them as the enemy to be rounded up. All right, you may say, but doesn't this high incarceration rate partly account for our really low crime rate? Crime rates are down. That's a good thing. It dropped precipitously in the 1990s and through the 2000s. But according to a committee of academics, COVID, the National Academy of Science last year, the relationship between our historically high incarceration rates and our low crime rates is tremulous. The result is that crime rate goes up and down irrespective of how many people we send to prison based on unfair public policies.
Years ago, California implemented the three strikes law that said that if you commit 3 felonies, you're locked up in prison for life. And even if the third felony is a relatively minor offense. When that passed, some lawmakers were saying that's the end of public education in California, because that's where all our money's going to go. That turned out to be very prophetic, but I think, again, hopefully people are seeing that situation just can't sustain itself, and we're going to have to make some drastic changes.
Equality equals sameness, meaning giving everyone the same thing, only works if everyone starts from the same place. Equity equals fairness, meaning everyone has access to same opportunities, but we must first ensure equity before we can justify equality. An example given, those whose income increases, their tax share should increase as well.
What is your theory on social change, and how can we be effective in social change in UCSD?
Okay. It's very complex. I think what I have learned is that you have to look at all different aspects of society, and some of this I teach in my classes in the summer bridge program at UCSD about how you can understand equality by looking at structures at the level of society. And in our case in the United States, pretty much from the beginning of the founding of the country, we've had a hierarchy of race where there's a dominant racial group and then several subordinate groups, we would say. So that's one critical hierarchy. We also have a socioeconomic hierarchy with wealthy people at the top of the hierarchy in the dominant position, and other people in the subordinate positions. And of course we have a sort of dichotomous hierarchy of gender, at least, as well. And these all intersect. And so the relationship between race and ethnicity and wealth is very important, and that affects educational achievement. So I think according to the theory, we have to look for ways to interrupt those hierarchies and the way that they show up in our lives in every way that we can. So
Another possible solution in keeping crime rates low is early education attainment, because 1 in 10 high school dropouts become prisoners. But in order to have early education attainment, governments must prioritize in changing criminal justice policies, while promoting more investment towards anti-recidivism education, first in order to alleviate such crime rates. Why is this a solution? Because children will need fewer costly special education classes. With this, they are more likely to graduate from high school and college and less likely to wind up in courts and jails, a voluminous cost that lies in the hands of taxpayers. In the end, higher educated workforce is crucial to the nation's economic future. Even though education will not be changed in isolation, we must first recognize the efforts to improve schools can be part of a process to create a more equitable society. High quality of education is a foundational institution and instrument in social change because in order for a better hope of the future, what Mahatma Gandhi would say, you must be the change you wish to see in the world.